Welcome to Inside the Mavs. Kevin Gray, Mavs pre- and post-host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks radio network. Joined, as always, by my partner, Grant Afseth of Mavs Sports Illustrated, covering the Dallas Mavericks everywhere they go these days. Appreciate you joining us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts for free. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. You can find Grant on Twitter at Grant Afseth. Another episode ready to drop for you today as the Mavericks are off before they take on the Los Angeles Clippers in Los Angeles. They got a nice road win on Wednesday, which we'll get into here in just a moment. And a little bit later on in the show, a little bit of news on how you can follow Inside the Mavs on social media as well. So again, make sure you stick around for the entire show to let you know how you can follow Inside the Mavs on social media. But before we go any further, got to say what's up to my partner, Grant Afseth, who's in Los Angeles covering these Dallas Mavericks. Grant, what's going on?
Well, not much. Definitely glad to have a little bit of a spaced out period here, 3 games in 11 days, as opposed to the, flying from Washington, D.C. to Milwaukee after, the first out of a back-to-back. So that's definitely a better situation for sure. I'm looking forward to covering this game tomorrow, though.
Yeah, the Mavericks coming off a 5-game and 8-day stretch were able to get a couple of days off before they took on the Lakers on Wednesday, another couple of days off before they take on the Clippers on Saturday. That means the Mavericks got to spend the Thanksgiving holiday in Tinseltown on the beaches, where apparently Luka Doncic was out here playing Thanksgiving wiffle ball out there on the beach for the Dallas Mavericks. So shout out to Luka and the team for getting some R&R out there in L.A., and they deserved it after getting a 104-101 win on Wednesday night. The Mavericks holding the Lakers to just 101 points, the lowest point total they've given up to an opponent this season after blowing what was a 20-point lead into the fourth quarter. The Mavericks were able to hang on to get the win, Grant, 104-101 on Wednesday night.
Yeah, for sure. That ended up being a very interesting situation. It looked like the Mavs had kind of put things away entering the fourth quarter, with that 20-point lead that you mentioned. But, right out of the gate, they allowed a 13-2 quick little start for the Lakers about halfway through the quarter. They called timeout, and then things continued to unravel for them down the stretch, missing a lot of shots. I believe they shot 0 for 11 on their first 11 attempts. They made 3 total field goals, I think, in the whole quarter, with Luka and Kyrie accounting for, each of those. And, there was a point where it got really, interesting where, LeBron beat Grant Williams, after ball watching on a 45 cut for a layup. And, that really swung momentum there. But, Kyrie Irving, to his credit, scored the final 7 points for the Mavs to really ice things out with that go-ahead three-pointer. And, also to Luka's credit, he had a great setup on the play. All throughout the game, he was picking apart the Lakers on those, spray out passes after drawing, 2 defenders to the weak side corner. And Austin Reeves, was responsible for guarding 2 with 1 on that play. And he had to have a split-second hesitation respecting that pass again to the corner, because Luka didn't turn his head to make the pass to the wing, until the very last second. And that one, little second of hesitation was enough to free up Kyrie for a great shot. And, that's what you expect from, great superstars, down the stretch of a game, even in a situation where Luka, he was having a tough time with shot making during that quarter overall, 30 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists. But, those are the types of plays you'd expect, in pivotal moments from, top players like Luka and Kyrie.
Yeah, the Mavericks only made 3 field goals for the entire fourth quarter, but as you mentioned, got the biggest basket when they needed it, with Kyrie Irving hitting that 3-point shot with 21 seconds left in the fourth quarter. The Lakers started on that quarter in the fourth quarter with a 21-4 run to open up that period. LeBron James was sensational, especially in that fourth quarter. But as you mentioned, there were some things for the Mavericks that they did to the first 3 quarters of the game that allowed them to build that 20-point lead that you saw break down in the fourth quarter, only going 3 of 19 from the field, just 1 of 10 from the 3-point line. Of course, that 1 3-pointer being the game winner for Kyrie Irving. But there was a lot of good from this game that you saw in the first 3 quarters, some of which we'll highlight here because, while yes, the Mavericks were able to, break their 2-game losing streak that they had coming into that game against the Lakers, we saw a guy in Josh Green continue to play well. He played well in the second half of the game against the Sacramento Kings on Sunday, was able to continue that with a season-high 15 points against the Los Angeles Lakers on Wednesday. Not only his aggressiveness, but continuing to knock down shots from the outside. Josh Green, who's had really kind of a slow start to this season, has really started to pick it up as of late, and he played really well on Wednesday night in the win for the Dallas Mavericks as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I thought that was an especially important performance because Tim Hardaway Jr., I don't think he even reached double-figure scoring after being so effective off the bench for, much of the start of this season. So having another player step up in that bench role was really important to kind of tide the Mavs over. And that's what you really want as a team that's looking to succeed, throughout the 82-game season. You need players capable of stepping up in that way. And, Josh, to start the year, as you mentioned, it's been a slow start, but a lot of his production is based off that shot making on the threes. And I think at one point, over half of his shot attempts were spot up attempts for his offensive possessions. And so that's really pivotal for him to convert on those catch and shoot looks. And he had some, really important ones, throughout the game to keep the momentum going for the Mavs. And, just throughout the game too, there's a lot of little things that he does, that I thought were really important. Like, he's one of those really athletic, just relief options you can trust. Like whether Luka just kind of, throws that really tough, reversal pass to the weak side corner, he could just really leap and just kind of like a rugby player, just catch it and just launch it to a teammate making that extra pass. Just a lot of little things like that. When he's playing well, it really lifts the Mavs up even further with a lot of the ways he ties the unit together. And, you like to continue to see him grow defensively, going forward. I think there's been some times where he's, hasn't taken that leap yet defensively as an on-ball defender, whether it's getting through, ball screens or things like that. Just continuing to see him grow would be, the next step for him. But in this game overall, there was a lot of plays to like from him. And, he was praised by, Luka and Jason Kidd after the game in the post-game press conference. And, he mentioned himself that, he's been really wanting to help the Mavericks by contributing to winning without being selfish, taking bad shots. He understands that things will sort itself out if he plays the right way and just stays aggressive within opportunities that come to him naturally. And, I think he did exactly that against the Lakers.
Yeah, his three-pointer at the end of the third quarter gave the Mavericks that 20-point lead and allowed him to get that season-high 15 points. And I think that's important for him because I'll continue to say, and I've said it going into the season, I've said it throughout the season so far and on this show, that I do feel like eventually Josh Green needs to be the starter on this team. You were able to get him a nice extension before the season started, but I think as he continues to develop rhythm alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and being able to be a guy that can be a consistent knockdown shooter from the outside. He went 3 of 6 in this game, from downtown against the Lakers. Those are the kinds of things, along with his athleticism, his ability to get out and transition, that I think provides the Mavericks a little bit more upside when it comes to his ability to be a long-term starter alongside Luka, Kyrie, Grant Williams, and Dereck Lively. We'll get to Lively here in just a minute as he had to leave the game, due to injury, which allowed Richaun Holmes to really shine in this game. But for Josh Green, another confidence boosting game for him. And I think for him, this is another step forward in the right direction after that slow start that I think will allow Jason Kidd to feel like he has more confidence in not only going to him coming off the bench, but eventually cracking that starting lineup when it has the opportunity to do so. I do think Josh Green's on the right path toward that. The question is, can the consistency remain there for him to be able to be that guy that's in that starting lineup alongside those guys?
Yeah, definitely. Because right now they're also trusting Derrick Jones to handle some of those quicker, tougher assignments out on the perimeter. And, there's been times where, based off the defensive results, he's been effective at times, but overall the unit definitely has left a lot to be desired defensively as they sort of figure out, their identity and really build continuity together. So I think there's an opportunity if Josh Green continues to, find himself in that area, as he mentioned before the season, wanting to really take, a greater defensive presence for the team as a defensive, on-ball presence and just in general. Seeing that throughout the course of the year will be important. And, just overall that shot making, as we've mentioned, time and time again, is very, essential to continue to be consistent. Because if, whether it's Derrick Jones or Josh Green in the weak side corner or just any spot on the perimeter, it's essential when Luka's getting those hard double teams, whether he's getting trapped on the ball screen, or they're sending that late double that we talked about that, Josh Green actually, he missed on that particular attempt against the Kings that we highlighted last episode, where Luka got that aggressive late double and just made a incredible, miraculous, just reversal all the way to the weak side corner, sideline to sideline. So, just having those plays in and makes, obviously not someone's going to be, perfect all the time, but it is, important to be consistent and make the defense pay. So that will be an important part of his, ongoing development after, last season having a career high, shooting over 40% from three, building on more volume, being aggressive in those opportunities will be important. But I also think another thing that really stands out about him is the energy that he plays with on some of the little details of the game. Like, he can really high point rebounds. I know Derek Jones has the athleticism to be able to do that as well, but Green really provides that sort of ancillary piece that really ties things together when his shot is falling, and he's avoiding turnovers and things like that. So I think just continuing to grow into his skill set will really be important on both ends of the ball, because the potential is very intriguing overall, as you've mentioned, when he is playing his best game, or even just 85% of his best game. It's very hard to stop that overall collective talent between Luka, Kyrie, and then you have Grant Williams and Dereck Lively as well. That's a lot of talent and firepower overall to have to account for.
Speaking of, you mentioned Dereck Lively there as well, being a part of that group. He had to leave the game on Wednesday as he fell hard trying to catch a lob, on Anthony Davis, and fell on his backside, had to leave the game. It was ruled out, with a back contusion, which opened up the door for a guy in Richaun Holmes to be able to step in and really play the best game that he's played so far in the Dallas Maverick uniform. I mean, he had 10 rebounds in the game, for the Dallas Mavericks. And the guy who's been used very sparingly so far this year was able to take advantage of an opportunity on Wednesday and made the most of it in his, 23 minutes that he played, had 10 rebounds, and was able to be a real force on the glass for the Mavericks, in which they needed against the Los Angeles Lakers on Wednesday night.
Yeah, it was very interesting overall, because actually entering the game, Jason Kidd had kind of highlighted their practice the previous day, being a very good one for the team overall. He felt there was carryover, but part of that was the desire to get Richaun Holmes as that first center off the bench instead of Dwight Powell, as we've been accustomed to seeing throughout this season. And especially with Maxi Kleber out, they needed someone to really step up in that spot, with how there's been interior struggles, allowing a lot of points in the paint, and just, at times really struggling on the glass. And, I thought there was a lot of little things that Holmes did well that won't even show up in the box score at all. Like, he said a couple was called Gortat screens, I think 3 times for Luka, where, the roller, gets down behind the big defender and just screens them off, screens their own man essentially. And there's no rim protector left to be able to really contest or pressure the finish attempt. And, Luka capitalized on that 3 times total for, point blank, wide open finishes at the rim. And, after the game, Luka was really, happy about that. He had actually said that, I owe, him a dinner. He said he was amazing. I owe him a dinner when talking about what Holmes did. And, it's easy to see why. Those are the types of veteran, maneuvers or positioning that really help tie a unit together when you're able to create quality looks, with screening and little details like that. So he had a very solid game overall. He had a really impressive block as well as a help defender. Rui Hashimura was trying to get downhill, going, baseline against Josh Green, and he just kind of rotated over, avoided fouling, and really got a great, pressure, and it came up with the block. So a lot of things like that. Even against LeBron in transition, there was a play where, Anthony Davis tried to just really, get into traffic and brush screen and disrupt both defenders from pressuring LeBron on the drive, but Holmes read it perfectly and got vertical and really disrupted LeBron's rhythm on the finish, and it was a miss. So just a lot of little things like that add up, and not to ramble too much about it, but I did a video breakdown about it, so I'm very in tune on the whole Richaun Holmes experience against the Lakers. There was an isolation possession he had defensively against LeBron where he held his own, and they had to get into a late shot clock, kind of a bad pass to Austin Reeves because they weren't really in tune. Austin Reeves was drifting to the corner. LeBron I don't think expected him to do that. And it was kind of a fumbled exchange, if you will. And then Josh Green was able to just really load up on Austin Reeves on the shot attempt by just launching at him, knowing the shot clock situation. And Reeves, missed the attempt. He got blocked. And that was just another sequence where, great defense in space resulted in a, late stifled shot clock possession for the Lakers. And all those little details add up, for a positive, contributor. And that was reflected in plus minus. But, that's not always a greatest indicator for sure. But you can definitely see in that particular game, all the little things add up for, what Holmes provided the Mavs, as well as being reflected in that plus minus for sure.
Yeah, and taking it to the fourth quarter, he and Luka Doncic were the ones that combined on the steal to get the, possession to end the game. Basically, Kyrie Irving hitting 2 free throws, to seal it at 104-101. But it was Richaun Holmes and Luka Doncic who made the biggest defensive play of the game when they needed it. And he was able to come up big to be able to move that game, toward a close. So I'm happy for Holmes because this is a guy who really was looking for a change of scenery coming from Sacramento, was really excited about the opportunity to come to Dallas to maybe have a fresh start and be able to make an impact on this team. And the first real true opportunity that he's had, when it's not been garbage time, he was able to make the most of those opportunities. So good for him for staying ready. It's very hard for players, especially for Holmes, who in the past has had some pretty good moments in his career where he's been able to put some things together, not as consistent as you would like for him to see over the last, couple of seasons. But for him, staying ready for that moment and then taking advantage of it, true professional in that sense, because it's very hard to keep your mindset focused in on a daily when you're not seeing consistent playing time. And then when your number's called, then you're able to produce and deliver. And he did so in a big way for the Mavericks. So really, really nice performance for Richaun Holmes in his first significant minutes as a Dallas Mavericks. I mentioned, played 23 minutes of the game, had 10 rebounds, was a +3, had 4 points in the game as well, and also had the biggest defensive play alongside Luka Doncic in the fourth quarter to be able to get that steal and then seal it for the Dallas Mavericks. So looking at this game overall, you loved what you saw from them defensively. I felt like the rotations were much better, a little bit more talking. You could even hear it through the broadcast, whether it was on television or on the radio. You could hear Jason Kidd, even with some of his communication, making sure that the guys were either staying home or moving toward their rotations where they needed to go. I thought the communication and the activity was much better. You say, Kevin, the Lakers were coming off the second night of a back-to-back after they blew out the Utah Jazz the previous night. The Mavericks did look a lot fresher, and you can speak to this more being there. How about having some practice time to be able to work on some things and then that being able to come to fruition, in the game against the Lakers? How about that? Maybe practicing has you a chance to be able to work on some stuff and then you can implement it in the game, actually.
For sure. And then there was with that possession that you mentioned where they came up with the pivotal steal with Luka and Richaun Holmes being involved in the play. There was actually an exact situation against the Kings where the Mavs kind of blew it on that possession. Where JaVale McGee received a alley-oop from De'Aaron Fox. And, what was interesting about it is, Dwight Powell in that Kings game on that play, he was like what they call like 2.9ing, for people that are not familiar with that, where you kind of stay in the lane. It's kind of self-explanatory, so it's not like a light years, like advanced term, but like you kind of stay in the paint for 2.9 seconds and you have to get out before you can come back in to reestablish your positioning. And Fox made a really high IQ play on that one, just knowing that, Powell had to leave the paint and then launch that alley-oop to McGee, and they finished it over the top. But what was great about that was, Holmes made sure that he made his presence felt in the paint, not having to exit as the play developed. But also Luka made a really high IQ play, being in position, helping the helper, as they call it, instead of, leaving Holmes in a compromised position to where there'd be no one to account for, Davis on an alley-oop. In that situation, you really can't give up that sort of a play. You got to really be cognizant of it. And I felt like, we don't know what they watched in film, but I would like to think that, they went over, those types of defensive breakdowns and were better prepared for it as a result. And it, likely translated in that late game situation too, at that pivotal stop. So overall, having that practice time, being able to watch film, all that stuff really adds up to go over your concepts, have your rotations down. And, that's what you like to see from a team that has high aspirations, is bouncing back whenever you do make mistakes like that. And, just overall, back to your point about Richaun Holmes and staying ready, I thought, after the Wizards win, on the road, Seth Curry made a really great comment about staying ready. And I think that's a testament to a lot of the players that are, the veteran additions to this team, is they all understand that throughout the course of an 82 game season, that there are going to be moments where, you're sitting, getting a DNP, but there are going to be a lot of moments where you are going to be relied on to step up and make plays. Even in that game, not to ramble about past situations too much, but Curry, stepped up in that game. He wasn't needed super heavily because it was the Wizards and they were already kind of up, but he really helped carry in the second half, further the momentum that the Mavericks had established. He stayed ready in that situation. And then against the Lakers, Holmes stayed ready as well. It stepped up. And he became even more needed after already being called on with Lively going down, as you mentioned. So, that overall just really is the type of depth that you would like to see, from a team that has high aspirations that we did not really see, last season.
Yeah, Dereck Lively still being updated when it comes to his status and availability for the game against the Clippers. We'll see if he'll be able to go after suffering that back contusion in the third quarter against the Lakers. But Richaun Holmes stepping up big for this team to be able to handle business, especially in the second half, where as before we move to the Clippers game on Saturday, they built a 20-point lead, playing well throughout the first three quarters. But then we saw the collapse in the fourth quarter. But it's funny because while, yes, you don't want to see a team blow a 20-point lead in a fourth quarter, this team continues to play extremely well in the clutch. And Kyrie Irving this time, as he and Luka combined for 58 points in the game, this team's clutch numbers have been really good so far this year. Again, you didn't want to see it have to come to fruition against the Lakers on Wednesday. But again, this is a team with a lot of veterans showing some resolve in these moments, and you give them credit for not panicking, because if you're the Lakers, you're going on this 21-4 run. You eventually take the lead at 101-99 on a LeBron James tip-in off of Austin Reeves' miss. The Mavericks did not panic, and you give credit to Kyrie Irving for keeping this team in the moment and knocking down a shot against the Lakers when the Mavericks needed him most in that game.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was even, especially, valuable for him personally because he entered the season really struggling from three. So for him to kind of catch a rhythm over these last, I guess you could say 5 games, I think I saw he's averaging over 28 per game, if I'm not mistaken, over that stretch. And he's really finding a rhythm overall. And, he's someone that you would look to obviously step up as that superstar, down the stretch. And, I think he was a leading scorer in, fourth quarter, points per game last year in the NBA. So just really seeing, him make big plays, take pressure off of Luka. That's something that you didn't see, for much of the season before the trade. And, obviously after the trade, they had to really, figure out a rhythm. A lot of people call it a hot potato, where they had to figure out who was going to make the play, and kind of had that feeling out process. But after having that full training camp, having that overseas trip as well to kind of build that continuity, those are two things that they like to really point to as, fueling that, better clutch result that they've had so far this season. I'm not really sure their exact record. I think they're 7-1 in clutch games, so far this season. So, that's definitely a big change from a team that had a losing record in clutch games and played more clutch games than any other team in the NBA last season. So if you're going to keep playing a lot of clutch games, you definitely want to definitely want to figure out how to get out on top more often than not. And I think that, I guess you could say that meltdown or near meltdown in the fourth quarter with going up 20, being down 2. That was definitely a good test to see the resolve of this group. I think when you have a player like LeBron James on the other side, he's naturally going to pick his spots throughout the game, similar to how Kyrie tends to do. And he's going to give you his toughest blow, during the fourth quarter. He scored 16 points out of his 26 in the fourth. And, just being able to come out on top against a team like that with one of the arguably the greatest player of all time, whether, not to get into a debate on that one, but, a player like that with that type of IQ who can really control a game when it slows down, coming out on top definitely is what you like to see. And, it was definitely close to an interesting result with him having that shot attempt at the end of the game. He didn't make it at the buzzer, but that was definitely one that we've seen a couple times throughout his career where he's hit some crazy, sideline fall away shots where you're like, oh no, I'm going to have to really adjust this recap if this one goes the way it could go. But, for my sake and the Mavericks' sake, it was great that, that shot didn't go down.
Yeah, so the Mavericks get the 104-101 win over the Los Angeles Lakers. Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving combining for 58 points. Josh Green, a season high 15 points. Richaun Holmes had 10 rebounds in the game in substituting for Dereck Lively. Before we go to the Clippers real quick, I tell people all the time, Luka Doncic is a damn wizard, because that pass that he made between LeBron James's legs to find Josh Green, it what was the right corner to be able to knock down that three-pointer. Just the stuff. I mean, we get used to it a lot, obviously being able to have the good fortune of covering this team, but Luka just constantly reminds us of how easy he makes the game look. And that pass was simply unbelievable. I can only imagine, obviously, watching that game live, being in the arena, the oohing and eyeing that the crowd made when they saw Luka Doncic make that pass to Josh Green in the corner for that three there.
Oh yeah, and it was just an incredible overall performance, because when you factor in, some of the recent games he struggled with turnovers, like against the Nuggets, he had like 8 or 9 turnovers overall. But this game he had 0 turnovers, and he threw a pass like that, like through LeBron's legs. Like that was pretty crazy. But overall, like I think that's just a testament, as you said, to the wizardry that is Luka Doncic as an offensive engine. He saw a lot of double teams, like they like to call Channel 5, like ball screen coverage, where they blitz the ball handler. And the way he can just stay poised and hold that double team, drag them out wide, and make like cross court passes is just simply phenomenal. And just, really like kind of like normalizes incredible play when you see him, as you said, throughout like his career. And then you see other teams, you're like, wow, like that's just remarkable what this guy can do. It's definitely fascinating to continue to see. And, like as they build continuity together as a unit, it'll be interesting to see how they manage to keep those turnovers down as he did, against the Lakers, because that's something that we've, on the last episode talked about. They having that emphasis of keeping turnovers down when you're wanting to play faster is very essential. Against the Pelicans, they racked up a lot of turnovers as well, and that resulted in a ton of like points off turnovers, fast break points. So you're continuing to be able to cut down on those turnovers while still seeing like incredible like passing displays is just really like the making of a team that has a lot of talent in an individual, where it's like when he's on the top of his game, it's very easy to see why it's so challenging to really stop this Mavericks offense. And you would like to see, as they had throughout most of that game, the defense, continue to provide some resistance to be able to really make the most of that, mastery of offense from, one of the top players in the NBA.
Yeah, and that's what you'll hopefully love to see as the season goes on, is the continued offensive efficiency. Even though they only scored 104 points in this game, I mean, you give the Lakers a lot of credit. This is a team that was able to lock down, especially in the fourth quarter, a team in the Lakers that coming into the game on Wednesday was a top 10 defensive efficiency team in the league. I mean, Anthony Davis leading the NBA in blocks, third in rebounding. Like, he wasn't much of a factor in this game, but you give the Mavericks credit for overcoming that, and Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving spearheading that. Together, they have been terrific so far offensively for this team as the Mavericks get their 10th win of the season. As we move toward a close for this episode here, the Mavericks get ready to take on a Los Angeles Clippers team who, as of this recording, had won 3 straight games. They are going to be coming off the second night of a back-to-back. They play the Pelicans on Friday and then take on the Mavericks on Saturday night, a team where they spent the last couple of games in San Antonio. I guess Greg Popovich was so fed up with the booing of Kawhi Leonard, literally got on a PA microphone in the second quarter and told the Spurs fans, hey, quit booing your former NBA Finals MVP while he's out here shooting free throws. And what I thought was an incredibly odd scene for an opposing coach to tell his crowd, hey, stop booing a guy who used to play here. I've never seen that before happen in an NBA game. Have you ever seen that before?
No, definitely not. It was definitely strange for sure.
So, I mean, I guess shout out to Greg Popovich for respecting his former player, I guess, but that's neither here nor there, because the Clippers are starting to find themselves a little bit, struggled initially after the James Harden trade, but this team's starting to come together a little bit. What kind of challenges from a scouting standpoint are the Clippers going to present to the Mavericks on Saturday night?
Yeah, they're a team that's obviously got a lot of talent with the amount of future Hall of Famers that they have. They have a lot of players that can really like pick you apart if you have a tough matchup on them. So, like early on in that first matchup, they had that big like second quarter. I think it was like towards the end of the first quarter, actually, in like most of the second quarter, that huge meltdown where it was like the Mavericks like a 35-4 run or something crazy. But that was like early on in the feeling out process. It's still early on, obviously, like just less than 10 games of them playing together. But, having a situation where they're building that continuity and that chemistry together in a more dramatic version of what the Mavericks had to go through last year after their trade, because that's two superstars in Dallas where you're trying to figure that out. But you have like four players that are used to being superstars on their team all at once. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of respond against the Mavs, because they'll have the film to kind of reflect on what went well, what went wrong. A lot went wrong, obviously, with how that game went for the Clippers, that first matchup. But just seeing how the Mavericks handle switching, whether Dereck Lively plays or not, how they continue to stay in like drop coverage, how they like mix things up will be interesting, because for the Mavs, they're very early in Lively's process as well, so they can't really mix things up too much with their schemes. And his health status is definitely going to be at the forefront, because you obviously you can't rely on someone who's not playing. So it'll be interesting to see what his status is. I remember Brad Townsend, Mark Stein. They were around him directly. Like, I'm in Los Angeles, but I didn't walk around him after the game or anything. They did, have a brief conversation with him and mentioned that, he says he'll be fine. And, it'll be interesting to see the health recovery element for a 19-year-old. 19 is definitely more capable of recovering very quickly than probably anybody else that would be suiting up in the NBA. So how his body responds will be something. But yeah, that was definitely a nasty fall from him. Like, he was on the floor for quite a while. The whole team huddled around him. So I would be very I'm not making a prediction by status by any stretch, but I would just be amazed at the human body, if you will, to go from that moment to then playing 2 days later. So it'll be something to monitor with those injury reports and the pregame update. But overall, if he doesn't play, seeing how the Mavs get into switching more will be interesting against that the Clippers team with a lot of ISO options, because they did switch at times with Holmes. As we mentioned in that play against LeBron, he held his own on an island against LeBron, forced that late shot clock three for Austin Reeves. And, they've trusted Dwight Powell to handle switching and play up to the level on ball screens as well. So just kind of seeing like what kind of looks they throw out against a team that's got a lot of options to run their offense through will be interesting. And, seeing how Paul George responds will be interesting as well. Like, because he had 2 points. He had 0 points at halftime, and he finally got on the board with his first, made 2-point field goal, I think, like a couple minutes into the second half. So seeing how they integrate all of their options against the Mavs and really like try to pinpoint weaknesses will be an interesting way to kind of evaluate the Mavs defense as well going forward. But again, as you mentioned, they'll be on the second out of the back-to-back as the Lakers were. And we talked about in the last episode, the way the Mavs handled defensively during this trip will be a very important indicator of their team as a whole, because, going from allowing a lot of big performances against the Bucks and the Kings on a, consecutive stretch on a back-to-back, to then facing teams that are on that disadvantage second out of a back-to-back with time to prepare will be definitely an important indicator of their overall, I guess you could say, collective fabric. Or not to put too much on like games individually, like in November, but I definitely think that's a good indicator of resolve in a way to have that identity defensively that can carry out. But it's definitely more complicated if Lively is not able to play. But we'll have to stay tuned for that for sure.
Yeah, continuity is important. We have a chance to be able to practice a little bit, to be able to work on some things. And you mentioned, the defensive stretch in these two games. You're starting to see, at least for the first game in Los Angeles, that the Mavericks utilizing that practice time well to be able to not only dive into the film, but more importantly, be able to execute defensively on that side of the ball against the Los Angeles Lakers. They'll need to do the same against the Clippers team that has a lot of firepower on it. The Mavericks in that first matchup that you mentioned, that when they won 144 to 126, really did their damage in the second quarter when they dropped 47 points on the Clippers in that second quarter, which really, that's what put the game away for them in that game. So we'll see if that could be something similar that happens on Saturday. But the Mavericks, most importantly, defensively, and we're going to continue to harp on this all season long, they were able to really turn a corner, at least for that Lakers game on Wednesday, how they continue not only with the rest that they get over the couple of days before Saturday, but then executing on the defensive end is going to be paramount against a team that can do a lot of different things, whether it be Russell Westbrook coming off the bench, James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. They've got a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things, and defensively, your rotations are going to have to be really, really good. The athleticism of a Derrick Jones, a Josh Green, is going to, and a Grant Williams as well, all going to be fully tested. Grant Williams is going to be looking for a bounce back game. Didn't play great on Wednesday against the Lakers. He's going to be looking for a bounce back game as well. So a lot of different things to deal with when it comes to this Mavericks team taking on the Clippers on Saturday night for sure.
You even have a new piece on the Clippers as well. They have more big man depth this time. Mason Plumlee is still sidelined with his injury, but they signed, Daniel Tice. And, with the Mavericks, they're going to have to account for having a more reliable option on the Clippers to play out a short roll. So if they try to blitz in any ball screen coverages, they're going to have to be really crisp on their rotations because Tice is a good decision maker. And, throughout the game as well, he's someone that does a good job of doing little things like positioning off the ball, to create advantages for his teammates as well. He's a very good screener. So that'll be another, added little layer to the matchup as a whole overall. Like, not to say like this is like the biggest game changer out there, but just another thing to keep in mind that they have a new piece that they didn't have last time. So that'll be interesting to see kind of how, if they continue to turn to Richaun Holmes, how he, handles that direct matchup as well, and how he continues to, make an impact if called upon, which, I wouldn't really expect someone to be, gone away from, if you will, after having such a performance as he had. But seeing the continued use of the center rotation will be something to monitor. But also, if Lively is unable to play, how they manage those minutes will become even more important. And, having that extra, opposition or like depth to the opposition will make it all the more interesting.
Mavericks take on the Clippers on Saturday night at 9:30 in Los Angeles. You can catch that game on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network on 97.1 The Freak. Pre-game with me begins at 9 p.m. following a special show with Mark Stein of 97.1 The Freak as well. We'll have an hour and a half of pre-game coverage leading up to the game as the Mavericks visit the Los Angeles Clippers. Mavericks looking for their 11th win on the season after getting the first win in Los Angeles on Wednesday over the Los Angeles Lakers. Before we get out of here, real quick note when it comes to Inside the Mavs. Shout out to Grant for creating our Inside the Mavs Twitter handle or X handle, whatever you want to call it. So you can follow us at Inside the Mavs on Twitter or X, and you can see show clips. You'll be able to see our episodes being uploaded to that particular Twitter handle as well. So you can follow us at Inside the Mavs. That's at INSIDETHEMAVS, Inside the Mavs, and make sure you give us a follow there. Again, all of our show clips, podcasts, videos, all that will be up there on Inside the Mavs on Twitter. So shout out to Grant for getting the social media on and creating Inside the Mavs there on Twitter for us. He's got a lot of stuff to do, but he found some time to create that. So appreciate that, man, for dropping that in there for us.
Doing the little things, as they like to say, for sure.
That's right. Doing the little things. And Grant's doing that as well. So really appreciate him for dropping it. Again, follow at Inside the Mavs for everything for the podcast here for our show. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Really appreciate Grant and all of his insights once again as he's out there in Los Angeles covering this Dallas Mavericks team as they get ready to take on the Clippers on Saturday. You can find him on Twitter at Grant Afseth. Make sure you check out all of his video breakdowns on YouTube as well by subscribing to his YouTube channel at Grant Afseth. You can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports and subscribe to my YouTube channel as well at Kevin Gray Sports, where you can see all of their episodes of Inside the Mavs as well. We'll be back on Monday to recap the weekend of Mavericks basketball as they take on the Clippers and continue their schedule. And then we'll have more on Monday recapping everything for your Dallas Mavericks here on Inside the Mavs. For Grant, I'm Kevin. We'll talk to you Monday here on Inside the Mavs. Y'all be good. We'll talk to you later.